Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today's guest is Coach Ian Vaughn. Ian, how you doing today, brother?
Doing great.
Awesome. If you want to go ahead and give the listeners a little background on yourself, please.
I've been coaching for about well over 10 years. My original plan was to be a firefighter back in college. Didn't really work out, trying to get hired out here in Southern California. So plan B, I was always working as a personal trainer during my training, and it kind of turned into my plan A over time. Then I got my own place, mainly training people one-on-one at Viking Valhalla Training Center. And I take a lot of courses. I love learning new things. And that's why we met. I love just learning new things. I don't ever consider myself a master of anything. I always like being a student of everything, doing it from a fresh background. So whenever I teach someone, I always think, how did I feel when first learning this? And that's what I feel like makes me very successful with coaching, from learning it from that point of view. But yeah, other than that, I love doing kettlebells, steel maces, clubs, both Indian and steel. And I recently just published in the last year 2 paperback books on steel mace training and kettlebell training as well.
Fantastic.
With a bunch of other ebooks on my website as well.
Awesome. When you were doing your firefighting, what was that training like?
It taught me a lot about how tactical athletes work. It's not just your basic linear type training. You're fighting a lot of anti-rotation with clotheslines and breathing properly, because you freak out in that mask, you're going to be pretty compromised. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we had to do firefighting in the Navy, putting that mask on, and it's weird, especially if you're not used to it. It kind of freaks you out in that first little bit. But you were talking about linear training, where was that still being done a lot for a lot of the people that you were training with? Were they still doing that?
Yes. I mean, I was first training at like 24 Fitness, like they wanted you to be on, no, you got to show them the strength machines, I try to say. And, everyone always had knee issues, hip issues. And it was like, they couldn't even step laterally or something. And that's what the majority of people, they just want to get back on a soccer field or football field, or just play with their kids at a park, and they couldn't do that being in that much pain. And I realized, sticking them on a machine that makes them sit isn't really strength training. So that's why I really got more into, learning more things, training 3D, rotationally, moving side to side, pivoting with your feet, actually flexing at your toes. And, even getting people out of their shoes is a whole nother ordeal nowadays.
When did you stumble upon kettlebells?
It was around 2014. I wasn't doing them that great, and I kind of felt like I needed more education. I kept asking around different forums. I was in with some friends, and they said, yeah, go to a StrongFirst certification. And I saved up a good amount of money for that. And I was like, man, is it going to be worth it? And it was. 3 days, very tough, to go through those testing standards. But what I liked, what they do is they say you can retest, you can send all your technique and snatch test, stuff in 3 months from then you can get certified. So it wasn't like a do or die thing most people were doing. But yeah, just learning simple swing, clean, snatch, get up, and knowing how to coach it, that was the biggest game changer for me. And that's why I got really addicted to doing more courses along with that.
Yeah, that's a brutal 3 days, man. I remember that. You're doing like at least 2,000 or 3,000 swings in a weekend.
Yeah. So yeah, you're doing all they just barely go into the swing and clean in the first Friday. So I've assisted now like 6 or 7 times first on first certification. We actually have to, as assistants, have to show up on a Thursday to retest.
Oh shit.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah. So they want you to know your stuff, because, if a master instructor calls you out,
yeah,
better know your stuff. They want to look embarrassed. So learning different movement patterns, how to actually use your body, is what makes me strong. People are always asking me like, oh, how do you lift all these giant kettlebells? I'm like, well, I learned the technique first, and then I've been doing it for years, and that's kind of the thing people don't see with social media, for example. They don't see all the hard work put in that someone has experience with. But yeah.
Yeah. And then you're understanding how to leverage your body in the right position, and, to create that power and torque.
Yeah. That's why I love steel maces and prepping them with stick mobility has been a great thing. I've had a couple tactical athletes from like police, EMTs, and other guys just knowing, even when I had to lift up a gurney, something as simple as that. That a lot of people, like, because that's mainly what firefighters do as well. They do more medical calls than anything. And I know people that just had back issues just from lifting up a simple gurney, and just teach them, oh, here's a hip hinge. And I'll just even show them put the stick behind their back. Okay, keep your head, mid back and low back connected to the stick, and then push your hips back. And then they're like, oh, that makes sense. So then they could see if their head's tilting or their rib flaring or they're flexing at their low back too much. Little things like that, those aha moments.
Well, because there's such a massive difference between if you're an EMT and you got to pick up a gurney with somebody on it, that's a totally different movement as opposed to doing a deadlift with a barbell.
Yeah. That's the great thing about kettlebell training is we call it a fast deadlift. Mm-hmm. That's what kettlebell swing is. It's just a fast deadlift. But we do, like anyone that learns it, they just can't do continuous reps. They got to do it one at a time. I just tell them to do a dead stop. So hike it, swing it, bring it back down to the ground. Because most people, when they build up that speed, all that torsion is going to go to their low back at some point. They don't know how to turn on the right muscles at the right time.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, because that offset load is something that a lot of people just aren't familiar with. And what's interesting, so if I was an aesthetics-based person, like I was just more concerned about how I looked, if you were trying to tell me the benefits of understanding how to move with load, what would you say to me to try to get me to change my thought process there?
Well, like as we were talking about with the whole linear training, they're very isolated in training. People always think, a bicep curl is just all biceps. Even in Pavel's book, Power to the People, he does teach a bicep curl, but he teaches you how to do it with your lats, serratus muscles, and keeping your glutes tight with this nice tall spine, and then curling up the weight. And you can get even more load up than you thought. Simple irradiation techniques, But yeah, because with aesthetics, they're very on the reps. They think more volume, more this, more that. And it's, I think they could use this a little bit more mobility in the right places, because I know guys with great abs and then they have the worst low back pain in the world, even hernias, because they're doing too much. They don't know how to step down, because everyone has that certain peak in training, but everyone falls off the cliff and they get injured. Versus, okay, I'm just going to step down. That's what I do with my training. I'm feeling something is off, but that's the aesthetic thing now is, no pain, no gain type saying. Mm-hmm. That's it only works for so many. I mean, if you're in the military, yeah, I get it. You're going to be in that mindset, but that's only for like a couple months though. But if we're talking lifetime here, aesthetically, it's not going to work. You look at guys like Ronnie Coleman.
Oh yeah.
You saw that documentary? That guy,
he's broken. He's broken up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he just did so many repetitions and so much load. He looks like a grandpa versus because when I saw him with his kids, I thought those were his grandkids. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, oh, those are his kids. I was like, wow. So it's like, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? When I talk to someone more so that is going more with aesthetics, and it's not like that. Just, I always tell them it comes down to nutrition as well.
Yeah.
I won't tell you that. That's a whole other topic, but yeah.
Well, I think when we see people move, we look at it as, are they athletic do they look athletic when they move? Yeah. And that's something that really differentiates a lot of people, especially the aesthetics driven trainer, so to speak, that they really, when they move, they don't look athletic. It looks like it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I deal with that all the time because I've had, unfortunately, a lot of trainers who don't like me because I like, hey, you're not doing that right. You should try it this way. Mm-hmm. And then they view me as stuck up for telling them that way. And then the next day their client is complaining, hey, my back hurts from doing that kettlebell swing by pulling it with my arms more so. Mm-hmm. People see a kettlebell swing, they don't see a swing, they see a pull.
Yes.
With their upper body, for example. They don't see the swing, and they don't see how it's more of a hip dominant movement, and your arms really aren't doing. They're just hooked onto the bell. But yeah, like that's that's a great athlete builder is that kettlebell swing, because you're learning to tense and relax, and that's where a lot of athletics come from. What can you tense, and how fast can you relax? That yin and yang type mindset. But yeah, people just think, okay, as many reps as possible, as hard as possible, and as heavy as possible. Then they exercise when they get injured.
Well, I think too, what happens is you get guys that are fairly strong, right? So they pick up a 24 kilo kettlebell and they're like, well, I can shoulder raise these things, so they're not focused on, hey, if I get more hip drive, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to improve my athleticism. It's, oh, this is a great shoulder raise. Getting my front delts,
Yeah. I mean, it's what everyone knows that you use a hammer with nails. You use a screwdriver with screws. And what I'm seeing on social media now more than ever, everyone's banging in hammer with the screw. Everyone knows the screwdriver is much better. So people got to instead of treating everything like, hammer and nail, you got to know what's the right tool. Like I see people they're treating kettlebells like dumbbells. Just use a dumbbell, reinventing the wheel, it's like when people say, like, what's the difference? Why should I get a stick mobility, And I'm like, well, it's been great for me because I get the right size, I can pick the right feet for the right height for the right person. And then the right bend to build. I love the six bend, but yeah, people will tell you like, oh, I use regular dowel. Well, it's going to break and warp over time. And then you don't know the height of anything. So it's like we have a system in place with everything. It just works better, And my dad's a handyman. If you see my gym, my dad helped me build most of that, but he actually told me, he's like, yeah, I actually use screwdrivers the most because it keeps my neighbors happy.
Yeah.
Do it the same thing like that. You don't want, I don't like swinging a kettlebell, swinging a dumbbell like a kettlebell. It's not distally the same with its offset load,
Well, I think what's interesting, I always find sometimes, well, I should not say always find, but I find that when you're teaching somebody the kettlebell swing and they see you do it, they're looking at how high the kettlebell goes. And so they automatically think it's about how high I get the kettlebell to go. So of course they pull with that upper body and so it's trying to explain to them, no, the height is the result of the power that I'm generating from the hips.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So we always say, like, when you do a one arm swing, as soon as your hips extend, your elbow releases from your hips. Same thing happens when you go into a clean. We just say a clean is a swing that ends in a front rack position. A snatch is a swing that ends up overhead. And that's what people do. You'll see if the person did all three, they'll have a powerful swing and then they'll be timid with the clean and then even pull it harder with the snatch versus having the same hip power for all three. And that's what makes you better at kettlebell training is the more you treat your hips like my instructors always say, if I took a picture of your backswing, I shouldn't be able to tell if you're doing a swing, clean, or snatch.
I was going to say the only thing that changes is the arc, basically.
Exactly. Taming the arc, what Pavel's saying in Enter the Kettlebell. I read that and that really stuck home with me is keeping that arc nice and tight. It's like I actually do that sometimes with people with cleans and snatches. I put a stick out in front of them and tell them to tame the arc to keep it nice and tight because it's not a long game as you would do with a two-handed or one-handed kettlebell swing.
Oh, that's good feedback too, and it saves your face too.
Yeah, I put all these type of drills in my new books now too lately to help give people that understanding with that. I even included stick mobility in the kettlebell book for a whole chapter just to help people understand, hinge, squat a little bit better between those differences.
Yeah, because a lot of people they think they're doing one thing and they'll tell you, like, you'll say, hey, give me a hinge. And they start squatting. But when you ask them, you're like, is that a hinge? And they're like, yeah, I'm hinging. It is kind of interesting to see how little body awareness they actually have of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, like, you don't have to get like super technical. I try to tell people in their most basic terms that's relatable. I think one of the best ways I heard, like, coaching is saying 1,000 different things that mean one thing. So I had one client, she loves the cue, like you have 2 grocery bags, pretend like you want to close your car door with your butt. So you have to push your hips back. She loves that. Another client, he didn't understand the hinge. And then one day it clicked and I said, okay, pretend like your pants are on the floor. And then now pick them up.
Take my feet out of them now.
and then pick up your pants. I mean, it's that simple. So people get that hinge down. But yeah, people squat. Like that's what you see with kettlebells. See people squat and that's how they pull the kettlebell too. So yeah, when I teach people the difference between squat and hinge, that also makes a big difference. Maximal flexion with the hips, both, but the minimal knee flexion from the hinge, just pushing back the direction of the hips versus the squat going down. Yeah.
So is your book, is it aimed to for beginners, or is it like what level is it aimed at there?
Mainly beginners. I try to view it from that general population. I know I can't like cater to everyone, but like I try to think, okay, if I was going to build someone up to like an advanced level, I try to go there. Yeah, with Enter the Steel Mace, the Mace book I came out with, that is very just on the beginner side, learning how to do, just beyond 360s. People kind of romanticize the 360, where you just push it around your shoulders and then pull it around, kind of like a kettlebell halo, but it's much more elongated from the distal load. And people go too far with it and they get shoulder pain from it. And then that's why I teach people, hey, do an offset press instead. So it's like a barbell military press, but the load's right here. What I love about that is like your obliques on this side is firing, but there's no load on that. You're resisting that tilt. And that's what helps build. They learn how to use their lats, their obliques, so they can do movements like 360s, for example. Because a lot of people get so confused, like, why can't I do it? So I break it down to those extreme levels. It was a lot of pictures to go through. But yeah, and then the kettlebell book, I try to go more advanced with singles and advancing into doubles.
Nice. How long did it take to write your book? And
I was inspired. Like my plan in 2020, as everyone's plan, didn't go to plan. Everything was kind of shut down. So I had all this time, and it took me less than 3 to 4 months. Like 3 months to write it, and then it was like another month of just making sure everything was written correctly. And then I tested it out with other people reading it. Luckily, my dad is an English teacher.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I actually owe it to him that I can write books, because I always tell this story. Instead of my dad punishing me, just sending my room, he would tell me, I want you to write an essay about your view window, 2 pages. And the most hard one, he said, write an essay about your thumb. So I had to get really technical. And he said, yeah, I want like 2 pages on this.
Wow.
Not only would I be in trouble, he would also get all my grammar too. So now I'd be writing. So, but yeah, it pays off now to write a book, and that all comes in handy. And then, but yeah, he was really impressed when I showed him the book. And, we fix everything. And it took like a solid 4 months for each book, because after clients, I was training probably like 9 or 10 people a day before March of last year. And then it went from really training 2 or 3 people a day. And now it's picked back up, train people in their garage. I've been training some people in their garages because they don't want to go to the gym. But I made a lot of opportunity with the time I had, and it was a good learning experience. It's actually harder to write. You'd think it'd be harder to make an ebook, because with the ebooks, I make a lot of videos. Everything's hyperlinked. Like every exercise you see, I demonstrate each one. I put like all these tutorials in it. But like when you have to change something in a book, you got to redo the whole thing. You actually get more pictures. I was lucky. My photographer, Annabelle, helped me with this book, getting some great shots, because I had a lot of photographers that didn't want to get close to me when I was swinging maces and clubs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were pretty intimidated. Yeah, like my front cover of my book and of Enter the Steel Mace, I loved her because she got like right up in there, because I'm swinging a 35-pound mace with one hand in that cover photo, and every photographer was just like, "I'm going to stand back here." And I was like, "No, I need the action. I need you to get up front." Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So you said you cut down on the amount of people you were training. Were you doing them virtually or still in person?
Yeah. I mean, I've always done some virtual training, but I haven't really done too much of the Zoom training, because that's why I was like, because I'm just not into just being in front of a laptop all day and showing people. I've shown a couple of people, like I got some clients in the United Kingdom, some in Germany, some in other different states, but it's not like, I'm talking with it. Like, it's more like once a week, I'm checking up on their training to help them out with like any type of tool they like. Yeah. I've had some clients, they don't mind coming to my gym, with everything going on. And then others, they feel, because some are elderly. I work with a lot of people with neurological disorders, such as Parkinson's and post-stroke recovery. And they feel they're a little bit more susceptible to what's going on. And I train them at their house, no problem. One of my clients, she actually turned her whole garage into a whole gym. And a majority of what we do is kettlebells and stick mobility. And she has Parkinson. Yeah.
What's your biggest focus, with someone with Parkinson's, like as far as type of training? Like, what are your biggest?
I mean, everyone's going to say the balance, obviously, because they're constantly shaking. For me, it's the grip strength, learning how to get torque and use their lats. And my client, Mary, she's 74 and she's been dealing with, the ups and downs of having Parkinson's the last year, adapting to it. So I can't just have a program set up all for her. I got to change those certain days where she's really feeling her nervous system is just not up to par those days. But she can carry 40-pound kettlebells, no problem. 15 yards up, 15 yards down. I just have her pick them up, keep that torque. And if I ever see her grip, going too far, that's when I know, okay, that's too heavy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've stayed at that perfect mode. And then she's like, I don't feel great with 40s. Okay, 30s. And those are even easier for her, And then her just doing, a lot of kayaking with the stick has been great for her to get her thoracic spine opened up. She has way more proprioceptive ability of knowing where her limbs are going like that. And just doing simple things like with the wrist complex you guys teach. That's a great one. During Stir the Pot, that was really hard for her at the start because she was very shaky. And now she can actually get that smooth.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
Have been great for her like that. We don't need anything, that crazy, people sticking them on a Bosu ball. I've never been a fan of that. It's a little bit dangerous. She was actually just telling me that story with what's her name, Brooke Shields or something. She actually fell off a balance board and broke her whole femur.
Oh, I didn't know that.
On a balance board with those roller ones.
Yeah. The wobble boards.
I don't use those, and I've never been a fan of those because I'm like, that's too much of a liability risk. Yeah, I always hear a new story every couple months on how someone fell off some type of balance modality and it makes them fall and then they break something. And I'm like, but yeah, as technical as I get is with a balance beam for her to get more metatarsal flexion. Mm-hmm. That foot complex one, just driving down the stick to get her posture up, going from big toe to little toe. That's another great one. So her getting more metatarsal flexion in her feet have also been really great too.
You were just talking about what the farmers carries as far as gripping either whatever you're carrying, but predominantly most people use kettlebells. I think that's a really understated aspect of the farmers carry because especially for guys, because they're all about how much can I carry, but then you start to see massive amounts of daylight between the handles and the fingers, and you're like, okay, put them down. But it's amazing how many guys know I can still get through this. You're like, no, this isn't a competition. Yeah. This is training. So I want a really tight grip. So what you said was great about that grip and understanding how to get into the lats with that.
Yeah, I mean, because let's be real, most people are gotten romanticized with the kettlebell farmer carry because they see it on CrossFit. They saw them lift those giant 200-pound kettlebells. It's impressive, but I wouldn't say the form's great. But because most people when they carry stuff, they're very hunched and they're trying to think as fast as possible. I always tell my clients it's not a bathroom walk. People run to the bathroom, their feet are very duck-footed, right? Or they're trying to hold it. That's what they look like. I'm like, no, just stand up straight, stop walking like Frankenstein, press your toes in the ground. Yeah, but that torque it's kind of like just building. That's another great thing with Pavel. He taught, the lift starts before you touch the kettlebell. So get your feet centered over the kettlebell, hinge your hips back, chop at the hips is what we say. Find the crease in your hips with your hands. Push your hips back. Make sure your back feels nice and flat. You can even wiggle your hips around. See if your toes want to be a little bit more further out or neutral. Then you grab the belt. Then you find your lats. Then all you do, it's more of a push with your feet. And I just tell them just rotate it out smoothly out to their side. Then walk. So once you're at full hip extension. But yeah, people want to just rip it off the ground and their hips aren't even extended yet. Their feet aren't planted. So yeah, just learning from the ground up first how to just treat the kettlebell. And yeah, this is one of my favorite. That's one I recently just posted that was my last YouTube video, the most underrated kettlebell exercise. And I said, it's the kettlebell carry.
No, because my rule of thumb is if I see daylight between the hands and the handle, then you stop and put it down because it's not about ego. So, but it's hard for some people just to have that mentality of, no, I can make it. And you're like, that's not the whole point of this drill.
Yeah. It's all keeping torque and and that it carries over to deadlifts. And if you want to go to barbell training, it really carries over greatly. I've been a fan of carries ever since reading Dan John's books with Intervention and Can You Go? Those are great books if anyone wants to get into those. But he is into carries. It's all he keeps stating and how many athletes that had back pain or they didn't feel like because they needed to get it up to like a prep for like a powerlifting competition. And he said he just had to do carries. And all the athletes are saying, I feel thicker, I feel stronger. I haven't even deadlifted at all. So I mean, my girlfriend, she does more kettlebell work than barbell work. And just yesterday, she deadlifted 275 for the first time.
Oh,
and
nice.
She barely touches a barbell. I would say maybe 2 or 3 times a month. She loves kettlebell training more than anything. And I just, with a couple sessions with her, I said, let's do kettlebell carries so you understand the torque. Because the same thing as we were talking about, you don't want to see daylight. Same thing with the barbell. You don't want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people use those wraps like crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never get that. I mean, I understand if you're doing it for sport, but for the basic human, we're just trying to get more strength. It's pretty unnecessary. So just getting that torque with the bar first, breaking it in half, her lat strength, and then she just drives it straight up, no problem. She's going to probably be at 315 no time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's kind of maybe even like, for me, I like to say, if you can't grip it naturally, then really should you be lifting it? You know, so it's one thing if you're training for a competition, okay, those are different parameters. But when we're talking about just everyday people like ourselves, it's a vastly different, a different approach.
Yeah. But that's why you see like a lot of people doing back squats. I consider a back squat an advanced exercise because people don't even know how to place the bar and muzzle it into their traps. A lot of people are placing under C7. And my mentor, Dr. Mike Hartle, who's with StrongFirst, so there's a big process right there that can stick out and actually get damaged if you place the bar against your neck like that. And it needs to be further down, and you have to pack your lats. No one thinks about their lats because they think it's
not a back squat.
Body. It's a lower body exercise. Once again, a Dan John quote: "The body's not built like Frankenstein. The body is one piece." People learning to do with the goblet squat first, learning how to brace their abdomen, use their lats that way, and the kettlebell pulls their torso in between their hips, they have a better understanding. So when I see they got that prerequisite of simply doing like a goblet squat, okay, now we can try a back squat. And then you can find those lats nuzzle on the bar back there. Because it's a whole different thing now, opening up the chest. So I actually suggest people do more front squats than back squats for just normal people who just want to get strength. But if you're going for powerlifting, I would say try to do more back squats.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. Yeah, front squats are the way to go.
But that's probably my favorite one. I even tried recently the I don't know if you ever tried the Kabuki Strength Transformer bar. I know you got. I think I've seen you with the other trap bar. They have. It's
a safety bar, kind of like the Kabuki one. Yeah, the Kabuki one's awesome, right? Because you can place the load, so it's either a front squat, goblet squat, or a back squat.
Yeah. I use that with a lot of my clients now that just can't. They want to do more back squats, but they have shoulder issues. So it has these longer handles because typical safety bars are right here, but their handles are right down here. So now you have more lat engagement, and then you can change the vector degree position with the chamber, and I can shift it upright to make it feel like a front squat and make it go right over their midfoot better. So I can kind of dial it in when you know how to use it. It's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, that thing's pretty cool.
I love just doing squats from me personally. I just love squatting monster kettlebells. Probably that's for people see me online do that. I tried belt squats, for example. Like I don't really care for those, but like you give me a 150-pound kettlebell to squat, that feels way better to me. So it's all for the right person.
Well, I think people are surprised too when you give them a heavy goblet squat or two kettlebells in the rack position, and they start squatting, how much core demand it takes. Yeah.
I know, because once again, people think it's a lower body exercise and they get they don't get enough depth. And that's why, I think with the best correctives ever is that dumpy squat you guys taught me. And that driving that stick up into just, a pull-up bar, just everything realigns itself. You just see how they get in that vertical plank, and you just see how the stick pushes up and their body naturally goes down. That's probably one of the best correctives I've seen.
Yeah, because when I did it, I was like, my squat was no issues. So when I felt it myself, I was like, if I'm feeling this and I don't have any issues with my squatting, then people that do should be like just completely lit up. And it's fascinating to see the reactions from people when they get into that drill and they really start to feel that full body engagement. Their eyes just go boom, and they're really feeling that.
Yeah, I mean, because when it comes to squatting, people, it's weird. People will tell you they can't squat down that far, but then they're sitting in that position that far. So they have the capacity, but they don't know how to come up from point A to point B. And it's a surprising fact that I always try to keep my clients standing as much as possible. I don't want them sitting, and because the average American, I think, sits between 7 to 8 hours now.
Yeah, it's quite substantial.
Probably even more after everything else has gone on, everyone else is quarantined. Yeah, I mean, the squat is just so necessary, but like I try not to force it with load with everyone. And it's like someone just feels good with the Dumpy squat, for example. I'm probably just going to keep them with that for a while.
Yeah.
So they feel confident with a kettlebell.
Well, no, it's a great way to really condition the tendons and the connective tissues, right? Without having to risk injuring them. So I think it's a really safe drill for them to get into.
Yeah. And that's like another one. I think like a great one is just, being on your back and like you have the two sticks against the wall and just to bring their knees tucked in like a crunch. Like if they can't hang and they crunch. But what I like about that drill is we're just flipping the squat on the floor and you're teaching them to keep their ribs hidden down, not compensating. And they actually can feel their core brace as their knees bent over their hips. And they could just kick their legs back out toward the wall on the floor. And then the back is in a good, safe position. And then even something as simple as from Dr. Stuart McGill, just doing dead bugs and bird dogs can also help out the squat. That's another common thing I'm seeing on social media. People think you have to, in order to fix the squat, you have to squat. It's not true. You really have to just get into the same type of position that looks like it. Like that quadruped position, I think that's why you see so many people doing, dead bugs. And like I have one client, he has back pain when he squats. So before, if he wants to have a squat day, we actually do the stick mobility one where you just drive the stick into your thigh. With your right hand and left thigh. And then you just extend one leg out, one arm out. And they really just feel that extension going all the way to their abdomen. And they feel it just connects everything back in place. Once again, not going linear. It's the core works diagonally.
Because a lot of people have been told you can't deep squat or it's not good for you. But I think when we know, and I don't know if a lot of trainers even realize a really easy way to show your clients or even themselves that they can go below parallel is just simply going supine and then pulling those knees up to your chest. And when you see you get past 90 degrees of hip flexion, it tells you that, yes, you physically can get to that position. You just don't understand the right mechanisms to engage to actually get you into that position once we get you into a vertical position.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of people that can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because I can do it doesn't mean my clients should do it. That's a huge thing. I'm seeing more coaches throwing their workouts, their capacities on other people that clearly don't have it, the cookie cutter type style. There needs to be a little bit more focus on what is better for everyone else. Because I can go, rock bottom with my squats doesn't mean everyone else should. I don't know their past history yet. And it's like, I've had a lot of people. The most advanced one I think I ever had was when this girl, she was super athletic. And then she got like the worst recommended surgery possible from her doctor, and she had surgery where she got all of her nerves in her low back cauterized.
Whoa.
At age 23, no rehab, no nothing. The doctor just said, no, we just need to cauterize the nerves because you have too much back pain. And then she came to me, and I remember we couldn't even get her hip hinge. And one day it took us a month just to get her just to even push her hips back, and she finally had no pain.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it really comes down to like, what's the past history? Everyone has their own, way of squatting. Everyone's squat's different. And that's another thing too. Like I think with the femur head, everyone has a different, I forget what the top of it's called, the ball socket, the top of the femur. One's a little bit longer. Some can be more circular than others. So people might have a neutral, feel more better neutral with their feet. Some feel better with their toes pointed out. So they have more room for their hips to move around in there.
Well, we talked about how many times, even when people squat just naturally during their daytime, just regular movement patterns, a lot of times your heels aren't always flat on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be just because you just don't have that natural movement anyway, so you're forced to squat that way. So there's different ways of looking at it, but a lot of times, typically, one foot will be flat and another heel will be elevated when we go into a regular squat. So that we practice that all the time with our clients, is having, we'll offset squat. That's a great way of conditioning, really one leg at a time anyways.
It's been that single leg deadlift and doing that was probably one of the first things I really loved about the stick mobility system was the Captain Morgan and teaching the internal and external tap rotations your leg and just building that single leg strength. Like you think the magic is happening at that hip capsule, but that rounded leg has to stay flat and they have to drive off it. And they use those sticks to get just that more taller. They're using their lats as they're pressing into the floor. And that helps them understand how their squat and their feet work all at once without doing the squat once again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like yesterday I had a client that just told me, like, we were squatting and she told me her right glute was just feeling really too tight. And I even saw her hips starting to shift. So we said, let's stop that. And then I said, try to do that internal, external tap with the sticks. And she found it was loosening the more she kept focusing on internally rotating her hip. And it started loosening more up. And then we started doing more 90-90 positions, with the sticks, just kind of loosening up with the low back as well at the end of the session. And I told her, try to sit in the 90-90 position the rest of the week a little bit more. And that might help resolve that. And then we can get back to squatting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the body adapts to the stimulus you give it and adapts to the stimulus that you take away from it. So we just, unfortunately, people that don't move, don't put their joints and connective tissues through those ranges of motions. It requires adaptation.
Yeah. I mean, like we're seeing on social media, like people just get so influenced for what they see and you don't see how much work it takes. And it's like half the reason I can't go to gyms now. Like I have to cover my eyes.
Well, I like a good box gym visit every once in a while. I think it's always entertaining. So every once in a while you see something that you haven't seen before. So I think it's always entertaining time.
Yeah. Well, it also shows you because, as we go deeper and deeper into our field, you don't really know what's going on in the general public and their perception of fitness. So it gives you, a good sense of, hey, this is still what people think. And, how can, as fitness professionals, how can we start to, break that mold?
Yeah. Like a great example is like one of my clients, he goes to a powerlifting gym when he's not with me. And he brings his Indian clubs with him.
Oh, yes.
And people he says he gets weird looks when he does his mills because he has shoulder issues. So I make him do mills. I said, before you press, do mills. So you get that all loosened up. That circular type motion. Once you got those tendons, ligaments, great for that. Yeah. He just gets all those weird looks. People are like, why is he doing that? From a powerlifter type mode, all they're thinking is just, okay, just do this and raise your arms up and just, those horrible shoulder dislocations. That is the most crazy one I'm seeing now more than ever. Just that, compensating that lack of like they can't get the space in their shoulders and they jam their neck forward instead. Yeah. I mean, just unconventional tools, with like clubs and maces, that's like a perfect example of why people don't understand. Those are so movement oriented, but then like they can't connect the dots with the barbell with that. Because people think barbell, they just think, wait, more load. We recently, crazy story that just happened out here on my part of town out here in the Antelope Valley. A 22-year-old kid died because he deadlifted 700 pounds. He dropped he deadlifted it, and then because he was breathing so badly, he held and then passed out, and then the load dropped on his foot, and he thought he broke his ankle. No one knows the story. It's pretty controversial right now, but supposedly he thought one of his friends gave him Oxycontin for a painkiller, and he really took fentanyl, and he didn't wake up the next day.
Dang.
Age 22. So it shows you like how badly educated the youth is getting now, that they have to lift more and they have to take painkillers at age 22
Jesus.
Damn.
Just to get more weight up. It blows my mind because I remember seeing that gym and I'm like, someone's going to hurt themselves really bad one day because I saw these high school kids deadlifting more weight than they should be. Yeah, and that's now the result. They have that now. The owner is under a lot of scrutiny right now because that's a whole other story I don't want to get into. But it's just very sad to hear that a 22-year-old passed away because he thought, I need to lift more weight and I'm just going to take a painkiller to get rid of it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Especially because at the age of 22, you still got years of development still left. Yeah. And I think that's just a lack of, people don't know what they don't know. But I think what's sad is people don't want to ask if they don't know, right? They just want to, that's the, ignorance isn't an excuse. Yeah. But I mean, acknowledged ignorance, I think, is even worse. When you're like, I don't need to know that stuff, or I don't want it. Like with the guy with the Indian clubs, I'm pretty sure very few people have ever come up to him and asked him, why are you using those?
They don't ask him. He says he just gets all those weird looks, but then they wonder why his legs are so big. Right? I got his legs pretty strong. I got his upper body's pretty strong. He actually couldn't even do a bicep curl. He loves doing bicep curls, being a guy, and he couldn't even do anything. But now that we fixed his shoulders, he can do all the bicep curls he wants with no pain now. And it's because of movements like that with the Indian club, just getting that shoulder loosened up. It's only a 2-3 pound club. And that's what Gray Cook states with them. I use Gray Cook's quote with this: Indian clubs aren't heavy, they're fast. Yep. So you see guys like Tom Brady, he's not going to make millions with arms like mine. If he's got all that mass on him, hence why I'm not making as much money as him. But he needs that snap. He needs that quickness. He can't do that with a bunch of muscle mass. That's not his goal. Same thing with a pitcher. They got to be fast. People don't understand that. Pitchers and quarterbacks, they make their money on being fast, not lifting a bunch of weight. So I'm assuming a lot of their strength and conditioning is very focused on keeping their ligaments and tendons healthy. And there's not enough focus on that as we've been seeing, with a lot of tools. And that's why I think things like stick mobility and Indian clubs, those are like a perfect 1-2 punch for me to help show people where you're compensating before we even go into something like kettlebells or barbells. Mm-hmm. So,
well, fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on, Ian. We appreciate you coming on and talking about your experiences and your training and how you've incorporated the sticks. So we do appreciate that. Your ebooks and your social media, if you want to give the listeners where they can get a hold of you, where they can get your content.
Yeah, you can get a lot of my content over at coachvaughn.net. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Coach Viking Vaughn. I sell a lot of different ebooks just on, with clubs, maces, and kettlebells. And then if you want to just go with just one tool, you can go on Amazon with my books with a paperback or Kindle edition with Enter the Steel Mace, or with kettlebells with the kettlebell weights. And I am planning to release a online certification very soon in the summer with how to combine all these tools for coaches for all kettlebells, clubs, and maces all into one, so that you know which one to apply to a certain client base.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thanks, brother. And to all the other listeners out there, until next episode, be good to each other.